So I want to thank you for
no
giving
problem.
us this special attention.
Yeah, cool.
Because this is a really cool program.
This is really cool what we're about to go over. So this was just released a couple days ago from Keller Williams University. What this is I've been with KW, like I mentioned, a little over 5 years now. I'm a Keller Williams University approved trainer. There's only about 200 of those in the country. It took a lot of work to get there. So what's really cool is I get this information way before most instructors at the market center level get that. So you guys are probably one of the first people in the country to actually get to go through this course. It's actually like an 8-hour course. We're just going to slim it down to like an hour, hour and a half of what would be most important to you guys. Right. And some of this I may not even go over, I might just touch, but you guys now have this information to take back and kind of, pour into this a little bit. Right. So the main 5, we're going to be going over the first 4 topics here. Right. So raise your hand if you've read the MREA, or raise your hand on Zoom if you've read the MREA book, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. So in this book, I highly recommend it. Gary Keller and Jay Papasan wrote it. And how they wrote it is they interviewed the top 100 agents in the country. Didn't matter if they were at Keller Williams or another brokerage or where they were at. They wanted to talk to the top 100 agents in the country. After interviewing them for months, they found out that it was based on these 4 models. The top 100 agents all ran their business based on these 4 models. They're called the economic model, the lead generation model, budget model, and organizational model. Just in the last couple of years, they've really added the expansion model, right? That's once you've already grown a huge business and you're looking to expand into other cities. We're not going to touch on that as much today because there's plenty of courses. I want to focus on what you guys will get the most value out of, right? Which at your guys' stage in the business, you will want to focus the most on number 2. So put a little star next to number 2. That is by far, when you're starting in the real estate business, the most important model to you. So we're going to real quick go through model 1. That's just laying out essentially how much work you're going to have to do. Then number 2, we're going to figure out how to get that work done, right? Number 3 is the budget model. We're going to figure out how to pay for it, how to stay in business with the cash that we have. And then number 4 is the organizational model. So it's going to say, based on how big of a business we want to use, who do we need in our life? Do we need a coach? Do we need a mentor? Do we need to hire somebody? Do we need to partner with somebody, bring on a buyer's agent? What do we need to do to make sure that we hit that? So let's flip over to the first page. And
so, hey, you guys, we're going to provide this PDF after the meeting to everybody.
I can email it over.
It's
on KW Connect. Okay. You guys can download it, but we can email it out as well.
I'll put it up in the file section of the coaching group. Okay. Perfect. On the Facebook group, you guys go in there, you'll be able to download it. Just Perfect. Give me a couple hours.
And just so you know, once you get that, it'll be a little bit more than this. This is like 100-some page document. I've just taken out the most important things for us to go over today, right? So let's look at this. So this, on page number 2, it's really 3.1 at the bottom. This is the model of how to make $1 million in the business, how to net $1 million. So it's the same plan. If you're not looking to net $1 million, maybe $100,000, everything would essentially just be 1/10 of this, right? So you would just change this to where you're, but we start at the top because we reverse engineer this.
Can I interrupt for a quick second?
Absolutely.
This should look familiar because this is that same Excel sheet worksheet that we have, that we've all talked about. It's in the coaching drive, where you plug in what that money is that you want, and then
everything
it starts trickles, based on what your average sales price is, how many buyers, how many sellers. Exactly. So that's what this is based on. Go ahead, sorry.
Exactly. No, that's perfect. I'm glad that you guys are plugging into that, because most agents in the business, they just work like crazy, and then they just make a certain amount at the end of the year, and they hope that it's more than they spent. Right? They don't actually sit down and say, okay, I'd like to make this amount of money based on this amount of money we're making and the conversion rates and the price that I make per house. How many houses am I going to have to sell? Right? That's that buyer's listing sold. Then we even reverse engineer that to what's my conversion rate to once I put a buyer in the contract. Once I go on an appointment, how often am I signing that client? All the way till we reverse engineer to the very bottom thing. And what's that thing that we're looking for in the economic model? So we plug in the net income at the top, what comes out at the bottom, essentially. Nope, not your total units sold. Nope, not that either. Look at the
Contacts.
How many a week?
No, exactly. How many buyer appointments and how many seller appointments a week, right? The goal of this economic model is that you only do it 1 to 4 times per year. That's it. Should only take you 10 to 15 minutes a year to complete the whole economic model, because all you do is plug in how much money you want to make. Usually an Excel spreadsheet can calculate everything else. And in this case, to net $1 million, you'd have to go on 7 listing appointments a week. A listing appointment every single day of the week, 365 days a year, and 7 buyer appointments a week, right? So 26 a month, 26 listing appointments a month.
Question?
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
said you should only be doing this 4 times a year. You're reevaluating it quarterly.
Exactly. You're setting it at the beginning of the year for 2021, looking forward. At the end of Q1, I would recommend reevaluating it, because let's say your numbers will be off. You'll have to now do this in 3 months. Right? So if you didn't hit 7 a week, let's say through Q1, you were only hitting 5 a week. Well, now Q2, 3, and 4, you're going to have to get maybe 9 a week, right? To make up for that. And if you're not reevaluating throughout the year, you don't know
Taylor,
where you're
did you
at.
have a question?
Well, did it say how much the house price
Average commission.
Yep, it's right in average commission. So you see average commission amount is $7,150.
Yeah.
Yep. So how they would reverse engineer this is they started from the top and down, but you can reverse engineer it from the bottom up as well. So for example, if you went on 26 appointments a month, that'd be 356 buyer appointments for the year. You have a 70% conversion rate. That means this person, if they go on 100 appointments, they're signing 70 of them. That makes sense? So out of 356, that means they're going to sign 250 buyers. Do you guys see that there? 250 buyers signed. A sold conversion rate is how often when you sign somebody, you actually sell them a house. Their percentage is 70%. So if they have 250 buyers at a 70%, they're going to actually sell 150 buyers. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Any questions on that?
But it says 175.
Exactly. Isn't that what I said? So they've sold 175 buyer listings. So they had to sign 356. They had to go on 356 buyer appointments to sell 175 buyers. Does that make sense?
Because not every appointment turns into a client.
In fact, a
And
lot
not
of them
every
don't.
deal turns into a
Right.
closing.
Right.
Things happen. So you got to overshoot so that you land where you want to be.
Exactly. This is planning for those disruptions. It's planning for deals to fall apart. It's planning for buyers to back out.
Right.
It's planning for you to show 20 houses to a buyer and then they never buy a house, right? It's planning for that in the margin. So out of this, they sell 175 buyers. They do the same exact thing on the seller side for another 175, which equals 350 houses or units. Any questions on that math? Cool. So then their average commission is $7,150, which puts them at $2.5 million in GCI. So their business has made $2.5 million. Now in the budget model, we're going to talk more about this top section, and you see how it says 30%, 30%, and 40%. We'll dig into that a little bit more in the budget model, but those are the standards for running a real estate company. You make roughly a 40% profit. So if you make $2.5 million, you're going to actually net, meaning you'll walk home with $1 million in the bank. Does that make sense?
I would
I know
also
that's a lot.
say you need to trust. You need to trust these numbers. I was talking about it last night. I really dove into embracing most of this last
Yes.
fall when I came to your class.
Yeah.
And I've started my own accounts. I've got my LLC. I'm doing all that stuff.
Yep.
I pay myself.
Yep.
All
that's
that kind of
awesome.
garbage. But the leap that I need to now make this year, because the numbers are high, is I have to spend this much money on lead generation.
Yes.
That's thousands and thousands of dollars, but I need to trust that
Trust
so
the
many
model.
other people have done this and been successful that
Right.
if you sink the money in, you will get the return.
right?
It's
If
a
you do it the
ledge that you
proper
gotta
way.
jump off of.
If you do it the proper way,
Correct.
and we'll talk about that,
Yeah.
right?
People here say that, so
We'll get there.
they're making
Yeah.
money.
One thing to really remember is we're not like starting a technology company, right? We're not starting a technology company where this industry is brand new. We're exploring spaces that have never been, thought of, business models that have never been done before. These real estate businesses have been running for literally hundreds of years. Since the 1800s, real estate has been actually even way before that, right? But even here, it's been done for hundreds of years. So there's proven models of people who have sold hundreds of millions of dollars, even right down the hallway, that we can lean on, and plug into. So if you flip to the next page, I gave you guys a blank copy here. So if you guys are already using the Excel sheet,
Mhm.
you can plug into that. But looking for 2020, the first thing we want to determine is based on the amount of money you want to make, how many buyer appointments you have to go on and how many seller appointments you have to go on. That's it. That's all we want to know. Once you figure that out, you can throw this away. It's done. You've served the purpose of finding out that you need 26 buyer appointments a month and 26 seller appointments a month. Now forget about that. Go find 26 buyer appointments a month and 26 seller appointments a month, and don't look at that till the end of first quarter. Does that make sense? Then you'll reevaluate. So there's a blank one in there for you. Now let's flip to,
Can I ask one more question?
absolutely.
Are taxes that we're paying, figured into the like operating expenses or cost of sale, or do we, if the net income was $1 million, are we then taking taxes out of that $1 million?
Good question. Yes, so that would still be taxed.
Okay.
The net income would still be taxed. Usually,
So you can have.
that's a really complicated question. It depends how you do it, I should say.
Mhm.
There's different ways to like pay yourself and give yourself bonuses and kind of get around that to where you're paying the tax itself. So that's a loaded question. But in short, no, that doesn't include taxes.
I would say what would be important is to take a half a year, or whatever, the next year to really just follow the model, and then you can start playing with loopholes and,
Exactly.
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Well, I was just
100%.
trying to think
Yeah.
like, okay, if I, need to make $1 million, have $1 million in my bank account, is it really
1.3.
more than that because I
Right.
need to pay taxes?
Right, exactly. Good point.
Okay.
So next model we're going to get into is the lead generation model. So any questions as we wrap up the economic model? Again, the only goal is to get how many appointments that you need out of it. Now, the whole focus of the lead generation model is how do I get 26 or however many listing appointments or buyer appointments per month, right? That's now the focus of here. And you see there's a 3-step process. It's that easy. You prospect and market, which we'll go over that in the next page. You offer them value and you exchange value. It's that easy, right? It's with any business, anything that you sell, we're doing the exact same thing. Now, if you look at the pyramid at the bottom, there's 2 ways to do this. There's 2 ways to get clients and lead generate. One, you can do marketing, or one, you can do prospecting. Those are the 2 ways, right? Now you see at the top, what does it say up here? What is marketing? Marketing requires more what?
Money.
More money, right? So if you're a brand new agent, let's say you just got into the business, let's say you don't have much money, right? You're on, going month to month, you're working hard to try to make some closings. Is marketing your best option?
Probably not.
More than likely not. It's very money intensive.
The hard way.
Exactly. So let's look at prospecting at the bottom. What is that? What does it take to do a lot of prospecting? A lot of time. Does it take a lot of money to call somebody? Does everybody already pay a phone bill? Probably for unlimited calls per month, right? You guys are already paying for that. It would be free for us to pull up Zillow right now, look up a for sale by owner, call them and say, hey, can I list your house? It's completely free. Now it takes the time of actually doing that, reaching out and then following up with them, right? So as you grow your business, typically in the beginning, you're going to be a lot more prospecting intensive. Why? Because if you don't have any clients, you have all the time in the world, right? If you're working full time, you have all of the time that you need to outcall these people and generate leads. Now, the busier you get, let's say now you have a listing, now you have 2 listings, now you have 3 listings, now you're working with 6 buyers and you're bogged down. Now you have very little time, but you just had 6 closings. So now you have $30,000 in the bank. Now what do? Do you keep prospecting like crazy every single day? Well, the answer is yes, a little bit with the time that you have. And you begin to allocate that money into more and more marketing opportunities, which require less time. So now you can have a billboard up on 275 and still be calling people, but yet getting a lot more leads from the billboard than calling, right? Where that time that you were using prospecting, you are now out showing clients, you're on more appointments, you're building your business, you're hiring an admin, you're growing. Does that make sense? All right, any questions on that? Cool. All right, so now I'll flip to the next page. These are all of the lead generation ways that you can get leads, right? So like we talked about, if we have more time on our hands than money, we're gonna look at the prospecting column. What can we do here? Phone or face-to-face listings without agencies for sale by owners, expired listings, circle prospectings, apartment complexes, charity outreach, corporations, builders, talking to banks with foreclosures, going door to door, delivering meals, teaching and speaking, walk-ins, booths, networking events, texting people, reaching out, just calling your friends and family, going on Facebook and DMing strangers, just saying, hey, do you want to buy or sell a house, right? Whatever you can do for free just to get your name out there and get face-to-face or in front of somebody. Now look at the very right side of marketing. This would be if you say you have very little time, you're so busy, but you have a lot of money to invest in this to get leads. We can do pay-per-click, SEO, radio, TV, newspaper, social media. You can pay somebody to do your social media. That could also be under prospecting, I believe, social media. I can feel like you could do that in a very like organic way of, just posting and reaching out to people where people will kind of come to you.
That might be referring to like Facebook marketing, same thing with like.
Exactly. They're referring to like Facebook ads that you would buy through command. Exactly. Yellow pages, grocery carts, you guys get it. You guys can read the list there. And then there's a lot that are both in the middle, right? Like farming, hosting events. One, you're putting on in a marketing event, but it also requires a lot of, prospecting and reaching out.
Right,
So,
some money,
yeah, some
but
money,
some
some
legwork
time.
still.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Any questions on any of those?
I don't know, I have a weird question, like,
Sure.
when you do like a foreclosure, don't you have to go to the, city hall for that or something?
So with foreclosures, a foreclosure is usually owned by a bank, right? So those are usually owned by the bank or government. So every bank is different. Smaller banks will have their own little asset management group within the company where they will actually select agents to list the property with. Some companies like Chase and really big banks that deal with, hundreds or like millions of properties in foreclosure, they will hire a company just to offload, sell, and manage their foreclosures. And so if you build relationships with these people, if we have a downturn in the market and JP Morgan Chase lists 500 houses in Michigan, well, all of those have to go to an agent, right? So if you have a relationship, you might pick up 50 listings in one day because you have a relationship with a banker, right? Or the asset manager of that banker. Does that make sense? So it might involve going to the city hall, but really the biggest opportunity there is the bank knowing you as an agent. Does that make sense? That answer your question?
I would
Cool.
suggest like looking at that and like highlighting a handful of things and just focus on that.
Exactly. That brings
You
me
could go
to
crazy,
exactly the next
right?
point. Flip to the next
Yeah,
page.
right.
And it
Okay.
literally says that roughly 40% of your business will come from one source. So most people look at this and they're like, oh, I got all this time, I'm going to do everything, right?
Yeah.
No. Pick like 3 or 4. Try them. If you hate them, pick something else on the list.
Give them time though when you try.
Exactly. You have to give them a lag time.
I had an incident and I was kind of scared to do it,
Okay.
but I was driving along and someone walked around here and I seen a for sale sign. And I
Awesome.
was tempted to knock at the door, but I didn't do it.
Just curious, why didn't you do it?
Well, one, I had my daughter with me. Second of all, I didn't know,
What's that?
that's awkward, especially with COVID. Like, who are you?
I could definitely get the COVID aspect of
Yeah.
it, of
Right.
wanting to
It's
step
like,
back. I
I
would
don't know
definitely
you.
step back
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
5 feet from the door and give those 6
Knock and
feet.
step back.
6
Yeah.
feet, yeah, from the door.
6, 5.
6 feet. I usually say 5, but it's 6 feet now.
Yeah.
We stand back, and It's just about knowing scripts and
Scripts, yeah,
objections, right?
practicing
So
Maybe
scripts.
for
that's
sale
what it
by
was.
owners, my first year in the business, 60% of my business, my one source was for sale by
And
owners.
that's probably what it is. I probably need a script to feel
Yes.
confident. Because
Exactly.
if I knock at the door and be like, I'm such and such, but
Correct.
maybe if I had a script and I was more confident.
Here's what I
would-
say, any script is better than no script,
Mhm.
right? Because you gave them no script essentially.
Yeah,
You know, you drove by, they didn't even get a chance. Even if you would have went up to the door
Oh.
and botched a script,
I know.
it would have been better than not even going up.
So if
Okay.
you go into Coaching Drive, there's a folder called scripts.
Okay.
There's a file that's 64 pages long,
Oh, wow.
full of anything you could ever want. And there's also other individual things in there. Take some time and
Yep.
just go through it.
Yeah. if
And
you-
again, pick 1 or 2 or 3 tops.
Yep.
And start practicing it every day. Practice it with your daughter. Practice it with yourself. Record it
I
on your
can
phone.
tweak
Listen to
it.
yourself.
I just
Shareable
don't know what
Google
to
Drive
say.
folder?
Yep.
Yeah, I went through it. a
Out
little
of
bit.
curiosity, when you saw that, did you happen to write any of the information down on the property?
I mean, I see them all the time.
Well,
I
there you
mean,
go.
you can come up with
Entirely,
the most straightforward script, and the one that I usually use is, hey, my name's Trevor. I'm actually a local agent in the area. I saw a lot of the homes in the area. Just wanted to see if I could do anything to help you get your home sold.
Okay.
And then they're
I'm
good.
gonna
They're
help
good.
you.
I'm just
Yeah.
waiting for a rebuttal. I'm waiting
Yeah.
for my friend's an agent. I can do it by myself. I'm waiting for a rebuttal
That's
because
my
I know how to
problem,
handle the
rebuttal.
Well,
rebuttals.
that's the script. That's what I need to describe.
Okay, the rebuttal, like, start
So-
putting me in corners, like,
So
Yeah.
what's your rebuttal when he says he has a friend in the business? Because isn't it the
Yeah, that's a good question. And I would say that's probably the hardest one for me to overcome. The only way that I've ever been able to get somebody to overcome is just say, no problem. Just so you know, your agent usually does know a lot of financial information and gets a lot of personal information. Are you comfortable with that person knowing all of that about you and still working with them and potentially damaging the relationship? And if they say yes, I usually leave it alone. Just because, like, if I look at a close family member,
Yeah.
I would never let another agent, work with them.
Some other people
Um,
also offer, if they're kind of on the fence,
You do.
giving the friend a 10%
I've done
referral.
that as well before.
Just so they feel like they're throwing a bone to their friend.
Because I had somebody say, my nephew is is an agent, but he's only been an agent for like 6 months now. And I don't trust him, in the business. I said, no problem. I'll give him a 25% referral fee. Yeah, I
No,
give it, I
25,
said
whatever,
25% referral fee. And, he can still get paid. You can still get a better agent. And he won't know your personal
Right.
information. She signed with me.
All
But
right.
it seems like a lot of them are more on the fence that they can sell. They don't wanna, they wanna.
Well,
take
but that's
all
why the
business.
goal isn't a follow-up. You continue to follow up until they get tired of trying to sell it on their own.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that brings me to the next
Yes,
model
let's keep
of
going.
follow-up, right?
Yep.
So
Good
what we talked about here is lead capture, right? So you're doing all of these things, calling for sell by owners, everything on that other list to get people into your database, into command, right? They go into this and there's two options here, as leads or as contacts. Leads are people you've never talked to, right? So if you get a brand new Facebook lead, buy it for $1 or something and it comes in, you've never talked to them, they're just a lead. They don't know you, you don't know them, but you have their information in your database. That's a lead. Now, once you maybe give them a call and they say, yes, I'm looking to buy, but not till spring of 2021, well, now they've become a contact, right? You talk to them, they now know you, you know them, and you're beginning to build that relationship.
I didn't know that.
Right.
I made 2 yesterday, so.
Good.
That's
Keep
perfect.
track of that.
So our goal every day
Remember.
is to be pushing people into our database and then pushing the leads into contacts. So every day we want to put more leads and contacts into our database, and every day we want to push more leads into contacts. We want to build our contacts. Does that make sense? Cool. Now, once we get enough contacts and we're nurturing them enough, that goes down to section 3. Right? Prepare contracts and conversion. This is when we begin to offer them a listing appointment, a buyer appointment, and begin to convert contacts into appointments. Right? So this whole model is how do we take lead capture, somebody who's out there that doesn't know us, we don't know them, down to an appointment, because that's where the last one left off. Right? The last one left off of how many appointments do we need. So now we've taken this and we filled how many appointments we need. So we know exactly how many appointments we need to make X amount of money, and we have a plan of exactly how we're going to get there. Does that make sense? Cool. Now let's go to the next page. And I just want to focus on the 36 to convert on the right side, right? So with your database, how you convert contacts into appointments or leads into contacts is through this 36 touch plan. So yours can be a little bit different, but this is the best one. And this is actually the one that I use directly from them. Mine's slightly different. I'll tell you how. So 4 touches per 4 phone calls per year, right? So that's 1 a quarter. So every quarter you should be calling your whole database at least once for follow-up. 26 emails a year. We have 24 emails a year, personally, they go out. 2 events per year. They say on here, our team has 3 events. And then 4 touches from promotional direct mail. We have only 1 direct mail piece that goes out. And then we assume a couple touches on social media.
So
Posts.
launch session number 3 specifically talks about this. And yesterday when we had our little Q&A from 10 to 10:40, we do that once a week, we were talking about this stuff. So if you want to spend some more time listening and talking about that specifically, go and watch launch number 3. We have it all on video.
Awesome. Awesome. So now let's kind of tie a bow on this part here. Now we know how many appointments we need. We know how to get appointments, but how many contacts do we need to get an appointment, right? So that's on the next page here, right? So there's a formula for this, of course, and you can plug in yours right at the bottom. It says if you have 500 contacts in your database that receive that 36 touch we just talked about, 6% of your database will buy a house each year, right? That's the statistics. So roughly 6% of people will move every year. Now, this doesn't even account for referrals. In a perfect world, those 6% should also be sending you 1 referral a year, and it should really be 12%, but this is kind of being conservative, right? So then let's say you convert 50% of them, right? And I would say that's conservative as well. Only 6% of people in your database that you're touching 36 times a year are moving, and you're only getting half of that business. I would say if you were executing that at a high level, you'd get a lot more than half, right? But just assuming that if we had 500 people in our database, we would get 15 appointments per year out of that. Does that make sense? Now remember, we needed, to make $1 million, we needed 357 appointments per year, right? So if we divide that by 15, sorry, let me do that again. We get 23 times 500. We would need to make $1 million just under 12,000 people in the database.
If you only relied on.
If you only relied on your database, that means you wouldn't have to lead generate anymore. You would only have to run the 36 touch on the people in your database. So if you only wanted to make $1 million a year, your goal would be to get 12,000 people in your database, touch them 36 times a year. That's it. And you'll make $1 million. That's the model that they guarantee improve you.
It's a numbers game.
133 people a day.
133
But
people
some of
a day.
it's automated.
Now,
A
here's
touch,
the
it's an
thing.
email.
Let's see.
You know.
Calls, if you gotta make it in a quarter, that's what we're talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, so if we have to make 133 phone calls per day, is that 7 days a week or business days?
That's days.
That's just days. Cool, so as working weekends too. So how the heck do we make 137 phone calls a day?
I mean, I do that. I do it.
Well, let me tell you this. If you're going on 356, you're not gonna have time for 137 calls a day. What do?
Pay somebody.
You pay somebody, you're making $1 million a year. Your business is bringing in $2.5 million. In fact, there's already a budget set aside to pay somebody like $200,000 to call the people for you. Do you think you could pay somebody $200,000 to call 130 some people a day?
That's called leverage. That's what
It's
we
called
talk about.
leverage.
It's called leverage.
This is where the business really gets exciting, right? Exactly. So any questions on how to run these numbers to figure out how many people I needed in my database?
What's pipeline?
What is a pipeline?
Yeah, like when I put I was
That
putting
funnel.
people in command,
Yeah.
and it says mark as lead or mark as pipeline, and I was putting pipeline because I thought those are people
Pipeline
I know.
means they're gonna be a buyer or a seller,
Oh.
right?
So could you pull Command up in here by any chance?
I
If you
can.
can, I'll move on, but then I'll show you guys real quick. what that means. So then next page is just lead generation best practices and traps. I'm gonna leave this for you guys to read and go over on your own time. Now let's move on. So before I move on then, let's finish up the lead generation section. Any last minute questions on the lead generation section? Cool. So click on opportunities here. So this is essentially your pipeline, right? So through command, they've just given us so many tools here to accomplish this. It's insane. So this is your pipeline. So you can see right now under contract, we have 2 listings under contract and 3 buyers under contract, right? So these would be your active client or your under contract. These are then your active. This, your appointment to cultivate is what I would consider your pipeline.
Right, so like
Right.
there's 9 people here that are cultivate, right? These are people that have raised their hand. They've actually told me that they're interested in buying or selling.
Yep.
Some of them don't want to do it for another year and a half. Some of them want to do it in the next couple months, right? But by keeping them here in front of you, you can pay attention to them.
Exactly. And
Right.
one thing that I did that I would recommend is you
Mhm.
can change the name of these.
Yeah.
I labeled this one 30 to 90 days out, 90 to 180 days out, and 180 plus days out.
Yeah.
So I know these are at least 6 months away, right? I know these people are the hottest, right? So I can then move them forward. So if somebody's here and I have a call and they say, oh, something just happened in my life, I'm now moving it to next spring.
Discovery.
Boom, all I do is just.
I'm getting separated. My wife's
you
going
just
to
drag 'em
college. She
over.
came back. I'm like, oh my God. So then if it's an appointment, then you throw them into an appointment.
Exactly.
Are you scheduling it? Did you schedule it? Did you keep it?
Yep. And again, you can change all these to whatever you want. However you want to run your business, command will let you. So you can see roughly the GCI
And then
here.
talk about this.
This is a percentage chance that this deal will close, right? So you can see in Cultivate, click over here now. You might say, if somebody's 6 months out, they have a 5% chance of closing. If they're 3 months out, they have a 15% and then
Right.
percent. And then if they're maybe within 30 days, maybe they have a 50% chance of closing. What that does is now scroll down. You see how this has a projected $3,700 commission? Scroll down. The probable income is $375.
Right.
Because there's a 10% probability of that closing.
And then when it turns active, see, it starts to get higher. Now, when you
Exactly.
start showing the house, it gets higher, you know,
And that probable income
it goes up
will
to
raise
90
as you move.
once, and it sticks around 90.
So click
I
back.
have to really take our time with this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to learn it.
66-day challenge. or
So
something.
scroll down here.
But I'm not-
What's really cool is you can then see it right here. The potential income, if everything was closed in the pipeline, is $187,000. The probable, based on those percentages of actually closing, is really making $62,000. Does that make sense?
That's so far this year.
Does that give you some motivation?
No, it's
for-
what's in the pipeline right now. So things that have closed are already gone.
Oh, that's just right now.
That's what's in there right now. Like,
Exactly.
it's so sad when you look at this, it's empty because it's October 1st. I'm like, oh.
Wow.
Right.
I know.
Yeah.
It's
Fiscal
like,
year is October.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every month it kind of resets.
Yeah.
For the new
and then
month.
this starts to show
Oh,
you.
month.
So this is a different animal. This is a whole nother and there's tons, which you actually teach a ton of those.
Yep.
Anyway, okay,
Cool. Any
So
last
let's-
questions on the lead generation?
because I
model?
want to make sure that they get to the budget model, because that's
Absolutely.
like eye-opening.
That's gold.
Yep. All right.
Cool. So now we need to manage our money, right? Does anybody know the stat for like what percentage of agents are out of the business in like
Where?
a year?
90.
It's like 80 or 90%
Hey,
of
Trevor,
agents.
where can I find that on here if I look it up? Is it on there yet?
Find what exactly? I'm sorry.
Whatever page you're going through, something so that the other people can see the screen if I share it?
It's only on KW Connect.
Okay.
Pull up the class on KW Connect. Get to it.
So just Google budget model, do you think?
Yeah, I would do that.
All right, you can keep talking.
All right, cool. So the budget model. So what do you think is the number one reason agents get these 80 or 90% of agents each year fail? What do you think the number one reason is?
Wrong expectations.
They're not
Wrong
really-
expectations, I would say that's a good chunk of it.
Lead
Run out
gen-
of money.
Lead gen, they don't want to lead gen.
Lead generation. I would say the biggest is the combination of the two. They don't have enough money to not lead generate as hard as they do. Does that make sense? Somebody might come in and have, 4 months of, income saved up to go full time, but not lead generate hard enough to close the deal within that 4 months of time, right? A lot of people underestimate how much work goes into your first few transactions, right? But what's cool is it gets exponentially easier from there, right? As you grow your business, as more people know you, as you build your 36 touch, as you build your database of those 500 people, and you run that 36 touch, those 15 appointments get easier and easier and easier to get. The more they know you and the more that they trust you. Does that make sense? Cool. So let's dive into the budget model here, because this is one of the most important reasons that will keep you in business. If you have enough cash, you have the time, right? So 2 tools that we're going to use to do this. The first one is the budget, and the first one is the profit and loss, right? So there's 2 mindsets. We're going to go over these. I have one included here for you guys that you can copy and use, but there's 2 mindset topics that we'll talk about. One is what Sharon talked about at the beginning, is invest, don't spend, right? The number one way that I see people not building their business quick enough is not investing enough into their business, is not spending enough. Some people overspend. I would say the biggest reason real estate agents don't succeed is they don't invest enough in lead generation and salaries.
I had, and I'm thinking about doing it, but I ended up signing up for Zillow, and I want to do a Premier's agent account, but I'm supposed to pay them a certain amount of money per month to get leads, but Novi is way too high.
Yep.
Way too expensive.
Such as, just curious.
It could start at $500 a month.
Low, that's low.
Yeah, I
That's
can't.
the starting.
So
price.
you've got a lot of time and not a lot of money. And so I would not suggest doing that.
Well, I was gonna pick a lower area. I'm out of this area, only if I know people. Even though I live over here, I'm not playing that ball.
Well,
Yeah, I personally don't believe in Zillow leads just because they're creating their own brokerage and what they're doing kind of against the real estate industry. In a way, Zillow is trying to take you out of business.
Yeah.
Right. So I would be cautious. I would be cautious to use Zillow, and I've used Zillow before to try to grow my business. What I would suggest is I did buy the Novi for Zillow in I think 2019, and I paid over $400 a lead. $400 for one lead. My bill was $1,300 a month, and I got 1 live connection and like 4 additional leads per month on top of that, where I could go into Command and I could spend the same $1,300 and I could get 1,300 leads, right? Which based on that conversion we just went over would be about 30 to 40 appointments a year.
Go into Command and utilize what utility?
Facebook,
Oh,
Facebook ads.
Yeah,
Yeah,
is that
we
how
need to
you
make sure we
suggest,
stay
because
on-
I did, and I
Absolutely.
pulled it because somebody, lack of a better comment, peed all over my post, some Wayne State kid with like long-winded comments telling me how he could have wrote a better ad. I was like, thanks a lot.
Okay.
So I pulled the ad, but
Yeah, I've never had that before, but I would try again.
yeah, well, I'm gonna, but
Yeah.
do you suggest it any different route by doing it through Command? As
Okay.
opposed to
mean?
going to Facebook, or is that a different subject?
No,
Yes,
definitely
we
go
need to
through-
like work
Alright.
this in.
Definitely
But
go.
there's absolutely great ways to do it through Command. And we actually have a lot of classes and sessions like through the whole market center.
Yep.
Um,
Just go onto our
Trevor?
YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Literally
Yeah.
all
No,
of
I've
it.
been, and that's what got my interest.
and he will show you how to do all of that.
Because I did it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, go back to the marketing and prospecting. Where should you be, focused? But
So I
that's a great-
found this, but it's not the page that you're on, but
Yeah.
it's something eventual. So
That's perfect.
Just so that
We'll
they
get-
can
We'll
see
get
it.
to that shortly.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So next page here, MREA budget terms at the top. A few things I just want to clarify with you guys. Cost of sale. What is a cost of sale?
Like, how much did it take to maybe get the lead? How much did it take to like, if you look at it, you have to market it?
Sure, you do have to market your listings, no doubt. Let me ask you, I'm just gonna give out an example. You guys tell me if it's a cost of sale or not, right? Let's say listing photography. You get a listing, you have professional photographer come in. Would that account as a cost of sale? You would say yes. So now let me give you the definition of a cost of sale. Cost of sale is you only have to pay that expense if you have a closing. Let me ask you again, is the listing photography a cost of sale, you think?
Possible.
So let me ask
Depends
you,
on
if you
closing.
go to a listing and you have a photographer photograph that house, Does that guarantee that you're gonna sell the house?
No.
Right, so listing photography, anything that you spend on your listing does not ensure that it's going to close. Now let's talk about legacy premium services, right? You can hire a transactional coordinator where they get paid, I think, 300 some
300.
extra amount of dollars at closing if they close the deal. Is that a cost of sale?
Oh.
Right, because you only have to pay them when it closes. A cost of sale you only have to pay when you make money. It's an expense that you kind of want to pay because that means you just made money. Does that make sense? That's the best kind of expense you could
I think
pay.
they said too, if it falls through, you don't get charged, but.
Exactly. That's the point of the cost of sale, because if you don't make money, you don't have to pay them that $300, right? You have to make the money for you to pay them that. That's a cost of sale, right? So now everything else is essentially an operating expense, right? So your for sale signs, everything else, a salary, all of your lead generation, because just because you buy a lead doesn't guarantee that you're going to close it, right? Any questions on that?
I'm just trying to think of like what some other cost of sales would be besides like if you had, title.
Good question. What about Keller Williams? Is that a cost of sale? Right, we pay the Market Center and we pay Keller Williams International. So we pay two different costs of sales there.
And your admin.
What if you have an admin?
Or your compliance fee.
Yeah, if you have an assistant, sometimes you can pay an assistant based on a bonus per transaction, right?
Or if a referral fee.
Exactly. I was just going to bring that up. If another agent gives you the transaction, you pay them a 25% referral fee. You don't pay that referral fee if it doesn't close, right? All right. What are some other operating expenses?
Marketing signs, lead gen.
Marketing signs, lead generation, salaries, equipment, technology, pretty much everything else, right? So here at the bottom are the standard benchmarks across the mark. So if your income is 100% of what you make, cost of sales, so all of your cost of sales should represent about 30%, right? Which would give you a gross profit of 70%. Operating expenses should average around 30% of your GCI, which gives us a profit or net income of what? Roughly 40%. That's right. Now, real quick, can anybody name another industry other than real estate where the average benchmark is a 40% profit or net return?
I'm doing life insurance, maybe that might be one.
Movie
Do you
theater
know it though?
concessions.
Is it good profit or do you know like the margins on it?
No, but I know that, it's almost the same as real estate. It's based
Okay.
on commission based. so.
Interesting. I'd be interested to see it. But do we know of any other industry that's anywhere close to that?
Private equity?
Private equity, okay. That would be, I'm not sure of the industry standard there, but I wouldn't doubt it would be close to 40% or higher. Anywhere else? Do you guys know what like an average grocery store makes?
I was gonna say movie theater concessions.
Movie theater concessions, yeah. Yeah, that might actually do it. That would, not movie theaters, just the concessions. What's that?
10 to 15%.
It's actually like 0.25%. It's like a quarter of a percent. You say for roughly every like $100 that you spend, they might be lucky to get a nickel, right?
Another
Or a
one's
quarter or less than
probably
that.
the nuclear industry construction.
What's that?
Nuclear.
Construction in the nuclear industry.
Interesting. I'd be interested to see it. Now, to start those industries, private equity and some of these firms, what do you think the barrier to entry is? It's usually millions of dollars. What is it for real estate? 40 hours and a couple $100, right? So with a 40% profit margin,
$1 million liability insurance.
for what? Real
So just
estate?
even
Nuclear.
Oh, for
So,
nuclear, yeah, right,
$1
yeah.
million liability insurance.
Good point. So now let's look to the next page and let's break down the different values. Yeah, exactly, right up here too.
I finally found the right page.
So you guys can see on average, if your GCI, if you make $150,000 a year, your cost of sale, even though average is 30%, is only 13%, right? Why is that? Well, because you're making a lot less. You probably don't have a buyer's agent to pay or a listing agent. You're usually doing that, on your own. Gross profit of 87%, even though the standard is 70, right? Expenses are a little bit higher. So they have less cost of sale, but a little bit higher expenses at 38%. So their net profit is roughly $73,500, higher than the benchmark when you're running a smaller, more, boutique business like this. Once you get up to a little over $10 million in volume, you're spending a lot closer to the benchmark on cost of sales, usually because you're bringing in other buyers agents or other help to help you get it done, more transaction coordinators, maybe listing managers, things like that. So your gross profit 74%, expenses 36%, so they go down. You shift some of that up to the cost of sale, and you still end up with a little bit actually below the benchmark of 38% profit.
Well, and this starts to show you how the more money you make, the more you put it into leverage, you leverage that money, and
Exactly.
it starts shifting things around in the budget.
Where'd you get the volume?
Oh, he just knows it.
Oh,
I
you
just know,
know.
so
He just
yeah,
happens to know it.
exactly. So 3%, if you did what,
So what
340.
is,
So times three.
did you say how much volume was that?
It's like what,
10.
10 or 11 million? I think 11
So-
point.
It's 3%.
Well, yeah, because it's commission,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. So here's what's really cool. So you see how let's just go to almost $1 million in volume. You see how they're making we'll even go here, $3.4 million in GCI. They're only making a 22% profit margin. Man, they're not anywhere near 40%. They're 18% off. Would you guys rather make 22% of this business or have a huge profit margin of 49% of this?
22%.
You
Well,
guys
it
would
depends
rather
on the
the
dollar amount.
22%.
Right.
Now,
what you want.
here's what's interesting. Who do you think works harder? This person or this person? A or B?
A,
A works probably a lot harder, right? Because all of this, 1.1 million, and even some of this, all goes to a team of probably dozens of people that do pretty much everything, right? He's built this brand over all these years, so he can't kind of sit back and collect this 22%. Does that make sense? So it changes. It's not always standard. The benchmark here is roughly for netting $1 million is 30, 70, 30, 40. That's like the standard that you see. You try to get there, but just know that sometimes it can be different. Don't look at this and see 13% and be like, I have to spend more money there, right? Just know that at different areas it's different, but there's a kind of a general benchmark to be with them. Any questions on this so far? Cool. Now this is actually the MREA chart of accounts. So let me flip. You have this in 2 pages. You guys have a blank version of this, right? You guys will have a blank version of this. So this then breaks out how much you should be paying in salaries and how much you should be paying in lead generation, right? Because there's 8 categories here: occupancy, education and coaching, supplies, communication and technology, automobile, equipment, and then insurance. And it tells you roughly what every percent should be, right? So if you're running $1 million business, you should be spending roughly 20% on salaries and people. 20%. So if you're running that $1 million business, you have $200,000 to pay a group of people to help make you sell that much in real estate. Does that make sense? You also then have in lead generation $73,000 to buy leads and market yourself, however you see fit, right? Most people, you can see across the line here is 11% here, 10, 10, 12, 11, 10. So it kind of goes, up, down, and back up again, back down again, right? But you can see the standard is roughly 10%, 10 to 12%, right? You can see here it's roughly 15, a little closer to 15 to 20%, right? And then you can see all of the averages from here.
Look at the education and coaching.
Yep, education, 5% in the beginning. 5%, that's a lot. But as you make more, that same amount, see how this is 23,000, this is only 7,000. Even though it increases a lot, the percentage goes way down because
But
you're
look at
making
how much
so
money
much
they're
more.
spending in that.
So is that like
Because
if
it-
you're the team leader, you're paying for your team to have a coach or?
Maybe.
you're
You're
Or
paying
for
for
you.
yourself to have a coach.
Mhm.
You're paying for probably some of your admin to have a coach and be trained by an admin coach. Yeah, you might be paying for your team to go to family reunion.
Con
or
Ed, all
NACA
sorts
camp,
of, whatever.
Con Ed for your team. Yeah, a lot of different
Stuff.
opportunities there.
Okay.
Any questions on this so far? Now, let me ask you, if you guys just said, some people say I don't really need to make a profit right now. I just want to grow my business as much as possible, right? So let's say you're like, I don't want to take a profit. I'm going to take a profit and I'm just going to plug it right back into here. Where are the spots you're going to want to overspend? What areas will you want to overspend? So go into this right here, the 12, And then rate and operating expenses versus compensation, lead generation, occupancy, communication. What are the 2 or 3 that if you wanted to push more money into your business and overspend in those areas would be a good thing?
Lead generation.
Lead generation is 1. What else?
Education, coaching.
Education, coaching would be 3rd. What's 2nd? Good answer, but not it.
Good answer, but not it.
Tech is important. But
I'm
it's
not guessing, but what does it refer to when it says occupancy? in regards to-
Occupancy is like office rent,
Ah,
place, things like that.
Okay.
Compensation, that's right. Your your people, right? The places you want to pour your money into is hiring more people to help you and getting more leads, right? For those people to service.
Inside sales reps, stuff like that, or
Exactly, and we'll go over who in just a
buyer,
second here.
you know.
We haven't forgotten that. So now let's go into that middle page right here. A couple different topics we're going to talk about as far as the budget model. First one is lead with revenue. Make money before you spend it. I'm going to kind of talk about this one and number 2 together. The second one says play red light, green light. So I want to give you guys a little bit of story of how I built my open house lead generation model, right? So I was one of the brand new agents and I wrote down what are going to be my sources of business. I decided they were going to be for sale by owner, because all I had to do each morning was pull up a call and it was free. My second was going to be doing open houses because it required time, very little money. I think in the beginning I didn't spend anything. And then there was something else. I think it was investors. So I would help investors flip houses, right? So when I started the open house plan, this is when Mark Z was here. He was actually in this space here. I would walk over literally right into this office here, and I would say, Mark Z, what open houses do you have this weekend? And he'd have like 30 listings or whatever. And he said, this and this and this one, you can hold open. And I would do 2, 3, 4 open houses a weekend. He'd reach out and then I would steal the Mark Z signs or borrow them. I would always bring them back. I would steal the Mark Z signs and I would use the Mark Z signs. I wasn't on the Mark Z team, but I just used them because I didn't want to buy my own signs, right? So everybody would think I was on the Mark Z team, but I never was because I was on my open house. I didn't care that I was promoting him because when they came in the front door, I would then get the business and go show them a house and actually sell it. This is leading with no revenue, right? Simply time that I put into this. And when I had my first closing, it was a listing that I got. When I had that first closing, it was like a $7,000 commission. I spent almost $1,000 of it on buying the coolest signs. I had like a 12-foot flagpole for the front yard, all with my branding and everything, to me. Everything when they came in the house, cookies, cups, everything that they could have. So then I really leveled it up, but I didn't ever spend any money. I only reinvested money from open houses into open houses and never spent $1
that you didn't
never
already
even
have.
invested $1 that I didn't earn from an open house ever. Same thing with a for sale by
How'd you
owner.
market your open house? Did you door knock?
I door knocked my open house. I printed the free flyers you get like 100 some flyers a month. Or is it 300? I don't know.
It's copies, not
500
flyers, but it's
copies,
copies.
Yeah, copies now.
But now with command, you make them yourself. It's way easier than it used to be, right?
Exactly, way easier. I
Mhm.
wish I had command. But,
Right.
yeah, so that's just kind of a good model. Now, sometimes, like let's say you're getting into Facebook ads, you of course can invest some money. What I would do is you want to commit to something. So if you're going to do, let's say Facebook ads, let's say you've heard a lot about it, I want to try it. You can usually buy a lead for about $1 to $2 if you can get good at creating a good ad. So let's say you say, I'm going to invest, $600 in Facebook ads. I'm going to do $200 for 3 months straight. And then I'm going to work those leads. Then end of 3 months, you don't have a single client, a single transaction. You got literally nothing from those 500, 600 buyers or leads. Then you don't reinvest in it anymore. You've lost your $600, you cut your ties, right? Now, let's say in that 2 months later, you have 2 closings that come out of that and you make $12,000. Well, now is the time to take 10% of that, right? 10% of the total, $1,200. Now you get to invest $1,200 into Facebook leads. So now instead of running $200 a month, now you're running $400 a month.
That's the red light, green light.
That's the red light, green light. Now you got nothing out of that $1,200. Well, maybe you stop it, right? And so you got another 6 closings out of that 1,200 leads. Well, now you get to
It's like
push,
going to the casino.
exactly
I mean,
$3,000.
You just gotta,
Double down.
Yeah, walk
only play
away
with what you got.
No way to hold it.
That's right. Don't
Exactly.
keep going up and buying more chips.
Exactly. A really cool thing that I've done as well is partner with like mortgage lenders. They can split the leads with you. So say, you go in $300 a month, I'll go in $300 a month, and we'll split the leads. We'll both call them. If you get a mortgage lead off them, give them to me. If I get a real estate lead, I'll give them to you.
That's why my friend wants to meet with me.
You'll get double the amount of leads for free. Right?
Relationships.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely. Any other questions on that, going through that? So that's how to red light, green light a new lead generation system. Number 3, stick to the budget. So this model that you're going to do here, we talked about 2 things. We talked about doing the budget model and then the profit and loss. So the budget is all you're going to do is for the year. You're going to plan how much in GCI you plan to make, and then you're just going to use those same percentages to allocate. If I wanted to make this much, how much would I have to spend on lead generation? How much would I have to spend on salaries?
Oh, it's right.
And
Yeah, just
then
make
each
your
month
budget.
you're going to actually track. So the profit and loss is just simply tracking if your budget was accurate.
So you guys, I know I've been flipping back and forth through pages because I'm trying to follow him. But on this blank sheet, you're gonna write down how much money you think you're gonna make on residential income. And then based on these percentages up here, you're gonna break it down and you're gonna build yourself a budget. Does that make sense? Yeah, I hope so. Because I know it's tough with,
Trevor's out.
for me trying to follow. With some sheets I have, some sheets I don't. I'm like,
It's a lot
ah.
of information, isn't it? A lot of information. Exactly.
Well, that's when you start
These,
making phone calls.
what's
That's that thing.
I will say though, this whole thing, this whole business planning thing is so hard your first year.
Mhm.
Because when you're making your economic model, you don't know what your conversions are, right? When you're making your lead generation model, you don't have solid lead generation plans. When you're making your budget model, you're not making money. You're like, how am I going to allocate it? You look at the organizational model, you're like, I can't hire people. I'm not making money, right? It's the hardest it will ever be your first year. What's really cool is do your best to plug into the models. What's really cool is when you're sitting here at the end of 2021 with a pretty good year behind you and you're planning 2022, you're gonna be like, yes, I know that conversion model and I know where that should be. I know this now.
Look, in my case, I have enough money to invest.
Right,
I just don't know what's the best, where am I gonna get my ROI?
exactly.
Which one am I gonna get the best return?
Right, so what you would do is plug in, this year I'm committed to making, X amount of dollars, right? And fill that through to how many appointments you need. Then you're gonna figure out how you're going to get those appointments.
And you would
So if
want
you don't need to spend any money, you don't have to. If you only need 1 appointment a month, you'd probably get that just calling for sale by owners or doing whatever. If you wanted to grow to 10 million this year, you say, well, you're gonna need some people and some leads. Then you would determine how much you plan to make. And then you just plug in your percentages, 10%, for lead generation. If you wanted to make $1 million, in GCI, well, you would need $100,000 in lead
like
generation.
this, right?
Exactly, you'd look just like this.
And there's a leap of faith. You gotta trust that you're gonna hit close to this.
And here's the thing,
If you're committed to
if you say this year or next year, you're gonna do this business, well, that's $24,000, is $2,000 a month. January 1, I probably wouldn't start $2,000 a month. It'd probably look like starting $500 a month in January, but then by December, you're spending $5,000 a month. It'd scale up through the year. That makes sense?
No, it does, and I got that. What I was getting at, I guess, was like what we were kind of talking about earlier, right? If you got $1,000 a month to spend or whatever, but you're telling me that the Zillow is not really gonna be a good ROI.
Where do you spend it?
Where do you spend it?
Gotcha. So going back to this, how the heck do we decide on this? What do we decide what is working?
The lead generation
Exactly.
activities is what he's looking at.
So if we're looking at just at the marketing here, we're gonna
Yes.
play a little bit of red light, green light, right? So there's no secret answer to know. What I would do is I would go to other top agents and say, what's working for you? And then try them, test them. Say, okay, let's say I want to try maybe radio, a podcast or something, put a budget to it, do it for 3 to 6 months. and see if it's working. If it's not, reallocate the budget.
For instance, something like farming, we know takes 12 months before you start reaping the benefit of it, ish,
Exactly.
right? If you're prepared for that and you're budgeting for it, start sending things out, but know that you're not gonna get that back for a while. But it takes time, right? So again, talking to other agents and things like that. And
Exactly.
us, right?
And it's
That's
all
why we're
about
here.
testing,
Right.
right? It's all about testing what works, what doesn't work. And that's the red light, green light. You know, if you try it for 3 months and you're not getting it, or 6 months, you set the time in the budget when you start to plan. So I'm gonna have this budget for X amount of months. If I don't get it, you know, that's canceled and I'm moving on to the next one. So it's all about red light, green lighting it.
Okay.
Any questions else on the budget model? Any other questions on the budget model? And this is separate from this, but do you want me to go over the accounts? How I have the account set up?
Quickly, or how they can access it,
Yeah, for sure.
if they're interested.
Actually, I would just,
I don't know
I'm
how.
going to highly recommend a book, and this book will literally explain everything. It's a really short read. If you guys like Audible, the author, Mike Michalowicz, is really funny in it. It's actually really fun to listen to, which is weird for a book, but it's called Profit First. It's literally this idea that, and this is separate from Keller Williams, but yet Profit First is literally you just take your profit first. It's just like it sounds. So you know how there's that 40% benchmark that we have and 30% and 30%? You would literally set up your bank accounts for as soon as the money comes in, 40% or X percent would go into the profit, a separate bank account into the profit, and then you have to learn how to deal with the rest and run your business off of the rest. Versus how most people do it, they run their business and give their business everything they need and just hope that it gives them the money at the end that they need to support their life, right? It's reverse engineering. It's let me take what I need and let me figure out how to, because more than likely, you'll figure out a way to make the business run on that less income, right? But yet it'll train your business to be more effective. And you can always take that profit and reinvest it, but you're taking that profit in the beginning.
You know, I actually think throw in another suggestion. That is a very good book. But Mindset, Methods, and Metrics is another one that's very similar to what we're talking about here.
Mindset, methods, and metrics.
It talks a lot about what we're talking about here. Goes in pretty
Nice.
depth into setting up your business. As
Okay. Yeah. And it's what it is. It's the mindset. How are you gonna
It's
do it?
figuring out your
And
goals
measuring it.
first,
Right.
and how to
Right.
break them down and
Yep.
to getting there.
Yep.
And what you gotta do for exactly what we're covering. So
All right, so a few more minutes of whatever to wrap up that you think is.
Exactly. Last real quick section, probably I would say the least important to you guys right now is the organizational model. This is how that business looks when you're running it like a $10 million business, right? There's you and then the CEO. Look, you're doing no work. All you're doing is managing a CEO, right? So then all of this goes through the process. So you guys are what we call level one. It's just you. You're the whole bank, right? Your next level, and this is the only thing that you really need to know at this point, is your next step is to hire an admin. That's it. Level 2 here, hire an admin, done.
That's
Right?
right.
That's your next step. Don't worry about level 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 yet, right? Know that they're there, but your next step is just to get an admin under you, where the areas of mastery are hire, training, and accountability. Scroll down a little bit here. After that, you'll then hire a full-time transaction coordinator, and they might be able to do like marketing and some other stuff too.
Because then that takes some of the weight off of the yearly admin
Exactly.
to do more other things.
Exactly, 100%. So this is where you start to really begin to succeed through others, right? You're putting a lot of time into pouring into these two people, right? Than just calling more people, right? You're pouring into them to grow your business. Scroll down to number 4. Right, so number 4 is when you begin to build showing assistants and a lead manager, right? This is somebody that you're paying to make those 137 calls a day to manage your database so that as you're going on these crazy amount of appointments, you don't have to follow up with the 12,000 people in your database, right? Then you can see from here, it really just builds. So just scroll down, you can just see it's literally at this point just adding more people. Eventually you get to a point, scroll down, to where you have a director of lead generation, which is in charge of getting all the business in and the appointments scheduled. You then have a director of sales, which is responsible for the agents and getting somebody out there to sell the client. And then you have director of operations that does everything else from that point. And when you have this, when you're at level 6, this is like, if you guys know who Michael Perna is down the hall, this is what level he's at. He has a director of lead generation, a director of operations, and a director of sales. So all he has to do is manage 3 people. He's not managing the 60-some people on his team. He meets with 3 people. Yep, he meets with 3 people and he pours into those 3 people, and then those people then have the impact on the organization, right? So scroll down here. The last step of level 7 is, instead of being in that position where you're just managing those 3 people, you hire somebody to do that, and you're officially now a business owner. You could never show up to work again, and that business
Go on
will grow.
vacation, and everything else is
Unless
wrong.
people are messing up.
Well,
Unless the
well,
Your
CEO
only-
messes up.
Exactly. Your only job at this
Just to
point
make a good hire.
is make a good CEO, because the
Yeah.
CEO is then responsible for hiring these 3 people, which are then responsible for hiring all these other people. So now you hire one good person, you manage one person for, a X $100 million business, So that is the plan here.
I was thinking, because like, with me being new, I was thinking about joining my Thomas team. But I don't know, maybe, I just heard about them yesterday.
I mean, it's definitely,
Pluses and minuses.
it's
depends
definitely
on-
worth figuring
yeah.
out the pros of if you even want to join a team or not.
Right.
If you want to join a team, then go interview 10, 20, 30 different teams, because every team offers something completely different. Different value, different splits, different everything. So first determine if you think you'd be good on a team, or if you want to build your own brand and own team, be a solo agent, and then go from there.
Right.
But the opportunities are honestly endless, within this market center in Keller Williams. So any questions on the whole model? So just to recap, we figured out we want to make X amount of dollars. We need to go on X amount of appointments. We take those number of appointments and figure out how many people we need through that formula, and then where are we going to get those people through our lead generation sources. Then we have the budget model where we're figuring out how much we're going to actually spend to make that happen, and try to figure out where we can spend the least amount of money so we make the most profit. And then the last one is, who do we need to bring in to help us? Usually your first year or 2, you wouldn't need to bring on anybody other than maybe like legacy services or somebody like third party that you could just hire as an independent contractor. But as your business grows, that model then becomes the most important out of everything, right? So as you grow it, it kind of shifts. So any questions on anything?
2 questions.
Yeah.
One is that all digital? It's in our database? Like, can we plug in those numbers digitally?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
wait, which
That's
numbers, hold on,
Man.
exactly which ones are you talking about? Because we talked about lots of numbers. Which model are you?
Lots
are
of
you-
numbers.
yeah.
Yeah, so,
Talking
and then,
about-
my
Well-
second question, maybe
Well, wait,
will answer
oh,
that.
okay.
Is it budget or profit or loss? Those 2 tools, or you use both of them?
Good question. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Budget is what you're going to fill that thing out as projections for the year. Your budget is that same formula. You're just putting down, okay, for January, I think I'm going to spend this. February, I think I'm going to spend this, for all of those categories. Your profit and loss is then basically going right behind, and it can be on the same spreadsheet, is going right behind that and saying, these are the actuals. I budgeted to spend $500 on lead generation, but I actually spent $372.46 on it this month. That make sense?
So you put it all in a spreadsheet?
Exactly.
Okay.
So what would,
That's what I needed to know. Like, where would you put all that information? Is there?
so, but you were
Or
asking
you
if
can
we
take your
have
budget model, go to a CPA or a bookkeeper and say, here's my
budget.
credit card, my business credit card with all this. Here's all of my income, have fun. And you literally give them that formula. If you go to a good CPA who knows and works with Keller Williams agents, just tell them you want the Keller Williams budget model, the MREA chart of accounts, and it's Keller Williams created an exact MREA chart of accounts for CPAs for being an agent. So all you have to do is say use
Who do you
this.
use? Do you use somebody like
I
that?
use Dale Bender out of Dearborn. Dale Bender. You guys can CPA with I don't know.
Bender and Bender. Who knows, something like that.
That's about right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
who knows?
it's about right. But yeah, Dale Bender out of Dearborn.
All right.
Any other questions?
So this is a lot. This was the skinny version, believe it or not.
Believe it or not, this is like an
Right.
8-hour course of really diving into each one of
And
these, doing the activities,
It was
figuring
just
it
for
out.
you guys to see and hear from the person who knows it best in our market center as far as teaching it, and all that kind of stuff. Of what Matt and I talk about sometimes, when we bring this kind of stuff up. Because we've been talking about it a lot lately, because we're near the end of the year, right? And we're
Exactly.
planning for next year.
What's really crazy is like when I was learning all of these models, like, okay, this is cool. Like this market center came up with. What's funny, if you go to beggar camp or family reunion, you actually get to meet and see 30,000 people who know every one of these words and terms and like studied this as a Bible
Yeah.
to their business and follow it and are making so much money when you see, 30,000, 40,000 people all following the same model doing it. It's not like just this market center put this together last week, and it's working good. This is proven systems for, hundreds of years, that they've been putting together. So
And I'm sure in everybody's business, there's hiccups, right? Because nothing's
absolutely.
perfect, but it's faith in the system, faith in the program. Just keep
Yep.
doing it. Just keep doing it, right? And it's like the stock market. At the end, the trend is going to take you in.
Right. There will be the ups and downs,
Right.
no doubt.
Is the full 8-hour class something that's like held here?
It is. So Matt Sutter is coming to teach
He is.
this. Yes, he
Ooh.
is. That was announced yesterday. I don't think they have a date yet. It'll be sometime, I believe, in October. But it'll be a full day,
He's good.
2021 business planning clinic where he'll then expand on these. And you guys be like, yeah, I know what he's talking about, and you can really get a lot more out of that.
Is that what they did like out in Troy or something last year?
Yeah.
They do it every year. He does
Mm-hmm.
a couple, he does one every quarter here.
Okay.
He does one every quarter here. So usually like
Here
October.
meaning like Metro
Michigan.
Detroit?
Some,
Yeah,
yeah,
our
Metro
region.
Detroit.
Okay.
Sometimes it's in like Ohio, sometimes
In our
it's
region, like right around
somewhere in
here,
our
yeah.
region.
Because it
But,
was in Toledo once, I thought.
yeah, I think so. So real quick, before we leave, I want to take 3 ahas.
Mm.
What did you guys take out of this class, and also what will you implement? Because I know not everybody's going to implement just everything we went over. So what are you guys going to actually commit to implementing moving forward?
Doing the actual like budget and reviewing it quarterly.
Awesome. Doing the budget, reviewing quarterly. All
So
right.
targeting the 3 areas that I want to focus on for lead generation.
Really focusing on the 3, but then put a lot into that. Go above and beyond,
Yeah,
in those 3.
that's my problem, being consistent. Like I'll do it and then it's like I'll have something else to do and then I'll say, but I'm learning that I'm gonna commit at least a day or two. Like I did something yesterday, surprisingly, and I made 2 contacts.
There you go.
Nice.
That's awesome. Anybody online have an aha they want to share?
Yeah, I think just the consistency of how often you touch base with someone. I think it's easy to reach out to a lot of people, but a lot of times we'll only make contact with them once, and we'll move on, and just not making contact with them enough times for them to remember you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Everybody is in the life cycle at some point, right? Everybody's in the life point of buying a house, right? They might be 3 years away from it. They might be 6 years. They might be 30 days away from buying a house, but they're going to need somewhere to live and they're going to move at some point, right? So when I call for sell by owners, how I actually built a lot of my database is when I would call for sell by owners, 5 years ago when I started, they would say, well, I just sold my house. Most agents throw their phone number away, never do anything with it, and just forget about that phone call. Well, what's happened is I would follow up with them through my 36 times a year.
So you put everybody you call into your database.
Everybody I
Every single
call.
person you call.
Then he made contact.
That you make
Everybody's
contact with.
Well, if not, then they're
Right.
leads.
Right.
So I have hundreds of people in my database that they don't know me, I don't know them. But every contact I've talked to and they know me, I know them.
I'm just.
A contact is where there's been a two-way conversation and you talked about real estate.
Exactly. They
You
know you're an
nurture it.
agent. They know you're they don't have
But
to
if they don't
want to
answer
use
the
you,
phone,
but
it's
they have
just
to know
putting
you're an
them in.
agent.
No, that they're just a lead.
If they don't.
What if
answer
they
their
never
phone,
answer their phone?
They just say leave.
They're just a lead.
You
Right.
put them in your.
And then you
database,
just
right?
keep trying to get a hold of
Yeah.
them.
Yep.
At what point do you dump somebody out of your database?
That's a good question. For me, it has to do with 2 things, location and price or value of a client, right? If somebody is in Northville and owns a $10 million house, I'll follow up with them way longer than somebody in Ohio or, 2 hours
Right.
away with a $10 million house live. And if somebody was, right next to my house with a $200,000 house, I'd follow up with them more than somebody in, Detroit with a $200,000 house. So, for me, it kind of depends.
Yeah, there's no hard and fast rule.
Exactly. Everybody's in the database and everybody's being touched through our emails, through our events, through these all smart plans, all these other means. And then they all get 4 calls a year from us.
You have to have their email.
Right.
We don't have everybody's email. I mean, we have out of our database, I think we have 70 or 80%. Right. So we do what we can with every person. If not, we're calling them of, hey, I'd like to send you this or this.
One of the things I've actually been doing, I put all my phone and Facebook contacts into my database.
Definitely do that.
The way I'm touching them, and it's simply, hey, telling them what I'm doing now. I'm trying to update my database, ask them for their email. And
Yep.
then
It's a lot of work.
I
It is.
talk
It's
to
a lot of
everybody,
work.
gather the
But
emails.
you have a
Emails
lot of
kind an
time
excuse to talk
and not
to
any
them.
money
Exactly.
Right.
right
Exactly.
now.
Trying to get
That's what
their-
you're doing.
more
And here's the thing, if
If
you
you're
had,
going- if you're going through people on your phone, just like, for instance, I have
Sure.
aunt and uncle that's been in their house for 50 years. They're not gonna move. They're
No.
80 or.
They
They
will
might know
some,
somebody
they
who-
will when
Yeah,
they
they
pass
will.
away,
I
not to
have-
be
yeah.
No,
someone's
no,
demise.
but their
But it's-
sons.
they're
then
gonna,
and stuff
somebody's
is
gonna-
different.
So-
I wouldn't put them in the, in my contact.
No, but
I'd
you
put
could
their
send them a
sons, right?
handwritten card
As
once or
long
twice
as-
a year that says, hey,
Yeah,
how
I
you
was thinking
doing?
about
Because
that.
they would value that.
Yeah.
They're not technology driven, but if they got a card from you, they'd be like, oh.
Yeah,
Yep.
the one thing
And then they're
is,
gonna write in their will.
I don't expect all
You
my,
never know.
Might
You
get the
never
house.
know. Yeah.
because I don't expect all my contacts to want to buy or sell a house, but all my contacts know people that I
They can
don't
get you
know.
to the next
Exactly.
person.
Like they said,
Staying
roughly
on top of my
6% a year.
contacts,
I
Mhm.
really need to
when
sit
they're
down.
talking with their friends who might be talking about this, they actually, I know someone who does
Mhm.
this. I got a
Mhm.
buddy of mine who's
Gotcha.
doing this. That's my.
All right,
Any other questions on house?
we good?
I'm just so used to like pen and paper contacts.
Sure.
I
And
do
here's the
so
thing.
good by that.
Then do it that
it's
way.
just, like, have a
I would
whole
combine on them. What are your thoughts on when you do your lead generation, write it all pen and paper, and then after your lead generation, have 30 minutes where you put all that into the computer and command, so you can follow up.
Like chunk it up.
And I'm just so used to my pen and paper being here and I'm just done with it.
And if you are a pen and paper person, I would go full into that. So what Michael Perna did when he was building it, he didn't have an
How about
electronic
Gary Keller?
database.
In
Gary
his-
Keller.
In his box.
Exactly, his box, he had
Roll it
a
up.
file
Yeah,
box
yes.
where it was labeled 1 through 30 on this
Mhm.
box. And every contact was like a note card. He got the big
Oh,
note cards.
yeah.
He'd write his name, phone number, email, and any notes on the note card. And then whatever day he wanted to follow up with a month, he'd put it in. So if he wanted to follow up on October 15th, he'd put it in the 15th.
Yeah.
So every day he came to work, he'd look at if it was the first, he'd go into the first, he'd pull out all of the contact cards for that day, call them all, and he would never not call anybody for 30 days. The most he could push somebody else was put them back in the one spot and call them at the first of the next month. So he never went more than 30 days. And you could do that with a 60, 90-day thing as well. So whatever fits your business,
Is this the one with the box?
The best system you could use is the one you'll use.
So we have to wrap this up and I gotta get home soon because I got a puppy that's in a cage.
You're good.
But, is this it? Hold on. No, this is the organization. How do I turn this down?
And
All
that
right.
was, we laid out 4 basic models for success.
This isn't it. Go on YouTube or Keller or Connect and look up the box, Gary Keller's contact box. And he tells the story about how he used to just put everything on index cards. And after he talked to them, he'd slip it into a different folder in his little divider in his shoebox. And then every week or every month he'd come and he'd grab everything that was in that folder and these are the people I gotta call. And then he'd write notes about them and he'd stick it in another month because he knew that's when he had to follow up. That's how he did it back in the early 80s because that's the way it went, right? But it was all pen and paper. So do what works for you.
Yeah, that system
Right?
is the one that works for you. The one that you use.
Okay. Bye, you guys online.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Trevor.
Bye, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Same, I'll see you in a little bit.
All right, see you later, thanks.
Hold on, let me end this meeting if I can figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I can't get away from that pen and